Hi everyone, Arlisha here and welcome to another video. I am so excited to talk to you about Beam Paints today. This is an indigenous owned company based in Canada. I've been hearing about their paints for a few years now and have really wanted to check them out, and I've just been waiting for the right time. So I recently placed an order. These are all products that I purchased myself. I was just so excited about the opportunity to support their business. And the three items I picked up to share with you today are this brush holder that's made of birch wood. I also picked up a ceramic palette and it's so beautiful. I actually really love the packaging on all of these items. It just feels very intentional and natural, and I love that. I like that this ceramic palette actually, it looks like a glazed cookie, and I thought it was neat that it had these shapes in it that might work really nicely for, you know, using as wells when mixing paint. You'll notice when we get to the painting that my messy roots held firm, and I ended up just using it almost as though it was flat and didn't have any grooves, but it's still beautiful and I love it. And for watercolors, I decided to pick up this palette, which I think is called Spectrum 11 on their website, and all of these paints are handmade in Canada, and they are wrapped in, I believe, a beeswaxed canvas and then placed inside of this little wheel of birch wood. They also use cedar for their palettes sometimes as well. When I was swatching these colors, there were a few that were so bright and vibrant and stood out to me right away. Mostly the three colors that are closest to primaries, they were just super saturated almost right away and so beautiful. I felt like a lot of the other colors were kind of hiding from me, if that makes sense. It may have just been that they needed a bit more time with just drops of water on them to give the paints time to reactivate, but it was a little difficult with a couple of the colors for me to coax out the actual, color and pigmentation. It wasn't necessarily that it felt like the color wasn't there. It just felt, again, like they were trying to keep secrets, and they were like, I don't know, like they were shy. So I'm excited, to be honest, as you'll discover very soon. I want to spend some more time with the watercolors themselves. I showed a little dot card in the beginning of this video, and I thought it was just more watercolors at first, and was very quickly surprised and ended up focusing more on the little dot card than the paints themselves. So don't worry, we will be talking more about the watercolors in a future video, and today I actually ended up focusing more on the little sample dot card that they sent me like as a complimentary gift with my order, but we'll talk about that soon. I really like how these brushes look in this stand. My plan was to use them for my oil and or gouache brushes to separate those from the ones I use for watercolors. I thought it would be fun, since this little dot card came in like a primary set, to do a swatch here with this little stencil that I have. A lot of you have asked me about this stencil. It was from a viewer who has an Etsy shop, and I believe that their shop is not currently active. So I will leave a link just in case it does become active, but it actually hasn't been for a while. While I was swatching this little trio from the dot card, I noticed right away that it felt like the paints were really runny and they were bleeding into each other in a way that I hadn't experienced while using this stencil before. I was really surprised, and I wasn't sure why the paints were just going on their own adventure so quickly, and it took me a couple of swatches to realize that these are not watercolors. This is gouache, and if you've seen the title of this video, you must have known that the gouache was going to peek in there at some point, but I wasn't expecting gouache. I knew that Beam Paints made watercolor and gouache. It's like when you have a cup of milk and you think you're drinking milk and then you take a drink of it and it's orange juice. And it's not that you don't like orange juice, it's just that you were expecting something else. You know what I mean? So when I first started swatching these, I was like, why are these watercolors acting like this? This is interesting. And it took me way too long to realize that it's gouache. But once I did, I was just over the moon and so excited to play with it and to try it. And I knew that when I did a little test practice piece for you today, I wanted to use both. I wanted to use the watercolors and the gouache. And this little trio is so cute. The colors here are called Beach Rose, Butter, and Sky Blue. All of the colors, including the watercolors, have similar naming conventions where they all have their own unique names. I will leave links, of course, to the Beam Paints website where you can find more information about the specific colors. As we get into our little practice painting for today, I wanted to use my sketchbook a bit more. I really want to fill up this Etcher Lab sketchbook. I love it so much, but because it is watercolor paper, I tend to shy away from it when I just want to do some sketching. But I really want to fill it up because I have a couple other sketchbooks that I want to start, but I don't want to start them until I've finished at least one sketchbook. So anyway, the practice piece that we're doing today is in that, and this piece will also be featured as the Patreon postcard for the month of May. So you still have a couple days to sign up over on Patreon if you would like to receive a little mini print of this painting. I love how intentional and natural and relaxing the design of everything here is. When I first started using the watercolors, my primary concern was actually the longevity of the birch palette. So as you can see already here, some of my colors were starting to get a little bit messy and that color was bleeding out onto the wood. And I think if these were the only paints that I had, or if I was relying on them as a primary palette, it might concern me more. I say that, but it really did spark in me just this difference of opinion about, I know things get weird and bushy here so quickly, but in just the preciousness of possessions as a whole, you know? I feel like in the world of material items, it's really easy to want to keep things pristine and have them clean and have them manufactured in such a way that they're going to last forever. And we really don't have to go back that many years in our history as human beings to find more stuff that was just made in a natural way because it was just what they did and it was just what they had. And now we have, you know, access to these palettes made of metal and everything is so fine-tuned in so many ways to be cleaner or to last longer. And I don't know, it just really made me think a lot about that sort of thing, to go, it's not in any way poor design, it's just different design. It's intentional and it makes you think about things differently. And I actually really appreciated that about the layout here. It's kind of like camping. This is kind of a weird analogy, but you know, when you go camping, you know you're going to get a bit dirtier and you know that you're going to be out in nature and things aren't going to stay clean and they're not going to be perfect, but that's kind of the point, you know? Just to be more connected to nature and to be out and like to tell the time of day based on where the sun is in the sky. That sort of feeling, you know? And that's kind of the vibe that I got from working with everything from Beam Paints. And that's exciting to me. What an amazing opportunity for products to make you think, you know? To kind of shift your mindset and take you to this sort of timeless place, like when you read a book or when you watch a movie and then you come out of it feeling like you were just there. And that's how I felt using these art supplies. I was pleasantly surprised by the gouache. It was so much fun to work with. I did a base layer of the watercolors first and then built more opaque layers on top of that. And that's a process that is familiar to me, but usually I try harder to cover up most of my watercolor base and make sure that my last layers is everything covered in opaque paint. But I didn't do that this time. I left some more of my watercolor washes shining through, and that was fun. It was really fun and enjoyable to play with in that way. I did use my own brushes, and I also used my own white gouache because this little trio didn't have white. There were actually even a few times where I reached and mixed some of the watercolors in with my gouache because there were certain shades I wanted, like a warm red. You know, when I wanted something like that, I just grabbed some of the watercolor, and it was very fun. Overall, the quality of these paints was very fun. It was enjoyable. I didn't find that any of it got in my way. And what really struck me the most about these was how the intentionality and the natural aspect of the designs of things just really transported me as a user. And I loved that. As always, a huge thank you to my members here on YouTube and my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for joining me on this quick first impressions look at these paints. I cannot wait to explore them some more. I really want to do a piece exclusively with the watercolors, maybe something a bit larger, so I can tell you some more how I feel about them. If you would like a postcard of this piece, you can still sign up over at Patreon within the next couple of days before May 1st. And that's it for today. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.